Welcome, folks, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, to episode 50 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Wow. I started this back in 2013. This little podcast, this little tiny minnow in the sea of great big podcasts everywhere in the world of professional wrestling. And, 50 episodes. Took me a little bit longer than I anticipated to get to 50, but here we are. I'm at 50 episodes. And, I personally thought what better way or more fitting way at this point in time than to cover my local regional independent wrestling promotion for the 50th episode. So here I am at 4:07 a.m. in the morning to cover STW's Bergman Brawl 2 from Bergman Park in Jamestown, New York on September 2nd, 2018. Yes, STW, also known as Southern Tier Wrestling, has been the regional promotion that I have been covering on the Indie Showcase series, since it's the one regional promotion that I regularly go to on a regular basis, and the other ones I just haven't been able to get to. Because, once again, drive time, drive distance, and all that kind of other stuff. So since STW Battle Lines, I've been covering my local regional independent wrestling scene, and over the past year or so, there has been a lot of sea changes in my promotion and the promotion I go to, and Southern Tier Wrestling has been a promotion that has had those changes. You always see new faces, old faces returning, and a lot of sea changes. And Bergman Brawl 2, despite being a free show in a park, had a lot of changes. Not as far as wrestlers dropping out or anything like that. No, as in title changes. Ooh, what exactly do they have up their sleeve this time? Now, I shall put out a little bit of a disclaimer beforehand. I am not employed by Southern Tier Wrestling. I do these cards as an independent review of my regional independent wrestling promotion because I like to. It's a really fun thing for me because I get to showcase regional independent wrestling in my area, and maybe you will hear about some people that you might have never heard of before who might actually make it big in a few years. Who knows? Or if they're already big, like one person who actually showed up on this card who's on Impact Wrestling. Yes, you might have actually seen him this week on Impact Wrestling, in fact. Some adventure. Yes, we'll get to him a little bit later. First up on our list is, I'll talk about how once again, as always, I talk about my story of how I got to this show, what happened at the show, and what sort of fun things happened. Well, we begin with apparently somebody decided to mock the thunder and rain gods beforehand. The thunder and rain gods did not like being mocked, and therefore a torrential downpour opened things up. See, I got up around 11 a.m. in the morning to get myself ready for Bergman Brawl 2 because it had a 1 p.m. start time. This was a show at Bergman Park. It was a part of the 39th annual Jamestown Labor Day Community Festival, which is held every year at Bergman Park. It is a pretty big deal for the city of Jamestown because it is their annual Labor Day festival. Now, Southern Tier Wrestling was at this park for the 37th annual Bergman Brawl, and the first ever Bergman Brawl by Southern Tier Wrestling. They didn't do a show last year, but this year they did do a Bergman Brawl show. And this is their second edition of that show. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches. It's a little bit smaller of a card this time. Usually they have about 8 matches, 8 or 9 matches on the card, but instead we have just 7 matches. Well, you're getting your money's worth then. Well, of course, in this case, this show was free. And naturally, because it was a free wrestling show, it attracted quite a crowd. Basically, filled up the entire stands and of the seating that was there. I estimate probably about 550 to 700, maybe even more, showed up for this show. I mean, it was a pretty packed audience. Um, Everybody came in, everybody looked at the show, looked at the crowd. There were people in the stands. It was an enjoyable experience. But anyway, there was a torrential downpour before the show started. So what happened in this situation was it was 12 o'clock, an hour before the show starts, and the rains open up. There is a torrential downpour before things get going. So we have some time to make a few little stops before the show because the show was relatively close by to my house, about 12 to 25 blocks away on the other side of the city. And so we arrived at the park. It's still raining, it's still showering, but the rain has subsided. And when I say torrential downpour, I literally mean torrential downpour. If it weren't for the fact that the wipers on our car work, you could literally not see anything out of the window. The downtown district had water running down the hill. So yes, it was like sort of like this classic samurai epic where you have like the rain show up and all the soldiers are standing in the middle of the rain waiting for that one commander to raise his sword and basically shout charge. And that's what this show felt like. So what we do is we park in there. We pay only a $5 fee for parking, which is okay, that's great. So and we park over on the park side, but we park on the wrong side of the park. We park on the left side. The show's on the right side of the park. And Bergman Park's pretty big. So what I do is I get out, I scout ahead to see where exactly this show is being held, and I find it at the baseball diamond. It's at a venue called the Babe Ruth Baseball Diamond. It's sometimes used by the Babe Ruth Little League series that comes into Jamestown occasionally, for Little League games. And it's an old school ballpark, has ballpark seating. It's old wooden ballpark seating. It's really comfortable. It's bleacher seats. I don't mind sitting in bleacher seats. It's always really comfortable. So what happens is that I talk to the owner and the co-promoter before the show, and they're like, "Yeah, the show's still going on." And what was great is the City of Jamestown Park Service had provided them with a 20 by 30 tarp to cover their wrestling ring with. So all they basically had to do was they had to remove the tarp, get the water out of it, and then dry the ring off, which it had minimum water on it. So it was wrapped like a protective bubble curtain, and they're cleaning the ring on. So basically, what happened is that there was only an hour delay, and they basically had to do some changes. They had to make some things happen that you wouldn't normally see. For example, they decided to make a walkway to the ring because the ground was incredibly muddy. So they made a rock walkway to the ring, they put down pads, and they also put down some wooden boards to make an entranceway. Well, they can't really cover everything with a wooden board entranceway, so what do? Well, in comes the Park Service again. They got an ATV. They got this John Deere ATV, and they're like, hey, why don't you use this for entrances? So every wrestler on this card got an ATV entrance. They sat in the back of the ATV. Sometimes they have the ref with them for the matches, and they would drive up the pathway, back up, and then go into this, and then park right in front of the wooden boards. And then they later on, when it dried out a little bit, they added more boards to the pathway so that the people could actually get in, do a ring entrance without having to worry about the tires sliding in the mud and hitting some of the fans with mud. So ingenious creativity, from my regional indie wrestling promotion, and that was something that was really nice to see. They had the care and mind for the safety of the workers in that situation because the ring's fine. It's the outside of the ring that's the issue. And they made sure to put down padding, they made sure to put down wooden boards, to make sure that everything was as safe as could be. And if you landed in the mud. And they also had to make sure that every single wrestler had to make sure to clean off their boots before they got into the ring. Because if they had accidentally stepped in the mud. So we have 7 matches on this card, and after the hour start time, and a lot of people seem to think, the promotion seemed to think that it was like we were going to freak out about this level. I was like, no, dude, take your time. We're in no rush. We're in no rush. This is a wrestling show. So the ring's here. The wrestlers are here. It's a raid before the battle, a reign of battle before the brawl, and this was a Bergman Brawl. so yeah, uh, so yeah. To start things off, we have a match here: Dewey versus Ereza Elwood with his devious manager Topher Sinclair. And they start things off. First, they start off with the musical interlude. It takes a while for the ATV to get there, but it actually makes it work because they're like, "Oh gosh, it's these two again." Now, Elwood is a wrestler who has this evil vegan hippie gimmick, and they're bringing culture and veganism and fresh produce, and in this case, yoga. Yes, Topher Sinclair arrives with a yoga mat and wants to teach Dewey Murray Loga. Yes, Dewey, yoga. The man with the finely tuned trucker physique. So, a truck driver is in a ring with a vegan hipster and another vegan hipster, and Topher is trying to teach him yoga. And it's like it was just humorous. Now, Elwood, being the more sensible of the duo at this point, realizing just how many times that his manager's plans backfire on them, decides to get get the early advantage by attacking Dewey before the bell. So the match starts, and it's a really good opening match. It's what you would expect an opening match to be. Just basically a 5-minute affair with two individuals just starting the pacing off. Now, because of the hour delay, there some matches had to have some time cut off them, and this was one of them. But I feel like the time cut wasn't really all that severe in this case. It was your typical Dewey opening match segment where you get some heat, you start to get some noise in the building, or in this case, the ballpark. And as well as the fact that if anything, if the Reigns came back, then it would be a match where people could duck and cover, and you wouldn't really lose much of anything at that point because they would be, in fairness, like, hey, we got another ring here, we gotta delay things a little bit more. So you have at least one match that goes off in this situation. 5 minutes. Dewey was really solid. He did his truck start finisher on Elwood. Elwood was really good at rolling in this situation. The heat was good in this match. And this match was a great way to start things off because what you wanted in this situation was a match that was okay, we have a match going. If the Reigns come down, it's not a match. It's just an opening match. It's not a match that's like, say, the main event gets rained out by rain. And besides, I think the wrestlers would have wrestled in the rain if they wanted to. So, solid match. Good way to start off. Good to great way to start off the show. And it continued. The heat began to build for the heels in this situation as Elwood comes out of the ring. And Dewey gets a good babyface reaction. Then the second match comes up. Now, this was the match that had the most amount of worry for time because the one of the wrestlers had double duty. No, he wasn't wrestling two shows. He was actually competing at another event. Yes, folks. Chicken wings fly the coop. Pizzas flee. Pizzas scream and hot dogs flee. Lock up the refrigerators, folks. Guess who's back in town? Megabyte Ronnie. Ah, yes, the last time we covered Megabyte Ronnie was at the Midway Mayhem show where he secured his first win via devious underhanded tactics against the Buffalo Bad Boy Brian Jennings. Time for round 2 in the park. Ronnie gets a spectacular entrance where he hams it up to 11 on the ATV. And then hams it up in the middle of the ring, celebrating the fact that he once again competed in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest this year. And also was competing, and like I said, he did double duty in this situation. He was competing at the annual Chicken Wing Festival up in Buffalo. Thankfully, that event had a start time of, I think, 7 o'clock, so he had plenty of time to get back up to Buffalo event started. So Ronnie faces Brian Jennings again. And once again, Brian Jennings nearly gets sneak attacked in the ring by Ronnie. Once again, really, really solid match. Once again, continued the pacing to ratcheting up in this situation. Jennings gets really good babyface sympathy heat because he's facing against the underhanded tactics of Ronnie of Makeup by Ronnie. And Ronnie is such a ham that he is able to get the right amount of heat from a crowd. Once again, remember how I said last time he got nearly a minute's worth of sustained boos? He almost does it again in this situation by getting nearly 45 seconds of sustained boos in this match. I'm not kidding here. If you want somebody who is going to agitate the bejesus out of a crowd, Ronnie is your guy to do that. You can put him at the opening end of the card, and you will get the crowd into such a frenzy they will be basically baying for his blood at that point. So after chants of shave your back, no, he's not at Lord Albert Tenside Giant Bernard the Third levels. But he tries a top rope move, only for it to be countered into the Buffalo Cloverleaf for the finish. Once again, another solid match. Two for two so far. Dewey and Elwood and Jennings versus Ronnie set a really good tempo for the show. Professional wrestlers who are professionally trained competing in professional wrestling matches. It really sells you really well to, any outsiders who just happen to have a look at this, whatever this is. It's like, what's this? This is pro wrestling. Because this is a Labor Day festival. This is a way to showcase yourself as a professional business. This is what we do. We are a professional wrestling company, and we are providing professional wrestling entertainment. We are providing a theatrical spectacle in this area. So it fits a Labor Day festival. This promotion fits a Labor Day festival because it's basically a public demonstration of what this is. This is professional wrestling. It's like the olden days of pro wrestling, where professional wrestling shows would come to towns and cities and demonstrate their craft. And Jennings versus Ronnie was yet another singles match that delivered on that promise of we are professional wrestlers. And even though that Ronnie's has only been into the business for about a year, I think, he really showcases with his personality just the strengths of what he can do. He's a ham because he's a professional. He's been in the professional eating circuit for years. The guy knows how to ham it up, and he's now the 25th ranked professional ranked eater in the Professional Eating Association. I don't know what he did to ranks 31 for 26. Maybe he Highlandered them all. But he's making his way up the pro competitive eater circuit, as well as making his way up professional wrestling as well, because this was a really great match. Jennings did all of his counter-based offense and had a lot of babyface fire. And that was these two matches. Great way to start off the show. Elwood versus Dewey was a way to showcase a professional wrestling match in case the weather started to turn. And Jennings versus Ronnie was the match that started to light the crowd. Both matches lit the crowd on fire to a certain extent. And that has got us ready for the first of the two, what I like to call the complex Rubik's Cube matches. Frontier Wrestling has done a few Fatal 4-Way matches in its history. I'm not sure they've ever done two of them on the same card, because this was the first of the two Fatal 4-Way matches. Fatal 4-Way matches are traditionally used to cram a lot of teams onto a single card in order to maximize space. It was especially good in this case because of the hour-long rain delay, which really wasn't an issue for us, or anybody else that was there for that matter, because it's like, hey, a professional wrestling event that starts on time is like the equivalent of the apocalypse happening. Especially on the indies where you never expect it to happen. And here we have two interesting angles finishing at this particular match. We have the finals of the Manny Escobar Memorial Tag Team Tournament. This is a Fatal 4-Way match with 4 teams. Moonshark, the Mako and Vinnie Moon, the Homewreckers, Anthony Gaines and Jet Rebel, the patron saints of professional wrestling, Mikey Everynight and Steve Gange, and Big Jack Stevens and Kate Kearney, also known as Azumi Curtis and Stig from Fullmetal Alchemist. And no, I'm not kidding here. These 4 teams competed for the shiny trophy that was the Manny Escobar Memorial Tag Team Tournament in honor of Manny Escobar, who passed away in March of this year. There was a tournament dedicated to him at the start of April that ran from Gold Rush to Fight Night to Midway Mayhem. And this was the finale of that. In addition, the Homewreckers, being fighting champions and nearly holding the STW Tag Team Championship belts for over a year, put their belts on the line in this match. So, if one of these 3 other teams managed to come away by beating the Homewreckers and winning the Manny Escobar Memorial Tag Team Tournament, they get not only a shiny trophy, but a set of shiny tag belts to win as well. What a wonderful little prize, isn't that? Anyway, this match was a match of joyful, wonderful chaos. From Kate Kearney killing a shark. No, literally, she actually elbowed a shark. She elbowed the Mako and he literally collapsed in the ring. To the Homewreckers being the massive disruptors that they are, the patron saints of professional wrestling trying to do every evil trick in the book, to Steve Gange getting his lights knocked out by Kate Kearney. Again, people finding out that Kate Kearney is a lot tougher than she looks. Remember that Izumi Curtis comparison? I wasn't kidding. Whenever Jack and Kate were in the match, it was like the equivalent of facing against 2 bruisers who wanted to beat up your lunch money, and then tie you up into a tree. And then take your lunch. So after that, you have... And then you had the patron saints of professional wrestling, who want to, gain the tag title belts to please their master, Brandon Thurston, who was mysteriously absent from the show. Mysteriously absent because Brandon Thurston was actually over at All In. Yes, Brandon braved the murky waters of the Chicago River to, give his knowledge of old-timey media for WrestleNomics Radio, because they were part of the podcast expose the day after All In with his partner Chris Harrington, aka Mookie Aganya. So it was just Mikey and Steve on this show. And Terrell was probably doing Shaolin Dojo training. Knowing Terrell Kenneth, he was probably doing Shaolin Dojo training. Learning the ways of the truth, justice, and the patron saint way. So, the patron saints tried to be the disruptors in this match. Mikey Everynight tried to remove Mako's mask. Vinnie Moon did Lucha de Esparras moves on Big Jack Stevens. The Homewreckers, being the Homewreckers, tried to disrupt all 3 other teams. However, things were not as they seemed with the Homewreckers. While Anthony Gaines certainly wanted to win that shiny trophy and keep his tag belts, Jet Rebel had other plans. I was looking back at my photos from this event, which you can see on my Twitter page at Fizzpatrick14, and, there was this look that Rebel shot at me. This devious, grinning look like he was planning something. Well, on a double team move at the end of the finish, Jet Rebel hits his own partner with a diving clothesline. As Anthony's trying to win the match. Anthony is now prone on the mat. Jet takes the fish man known as Mako, turns him over, plops him on Gaines. The referee counts the free count. Rebel speeds out like a rocket to the ATV, gets in the back, speeds away, and Moonshark, Vinnie Moon and the Mako are your new STW Tag Team Champions and winner of the Escobar Memorial Tag Team Tournament. Well, that was surprising. Tensions had been mounting between Gaines and Rebels for the last several shows. However, none of us expected that Rebel was going to turn on Gaines until he flashed that look at me, and I was like, oh, he's planning something, isn't he? So let's set the table here. Vinny Moon and Nameko are the underdog babyface tag team that is now a part of the tag team division. After having a tag team division that has been dominated by the Divine Alliance and the Homewreckers, you now suddenly have a lot of moving and shaking in the tag division. A division that had been stable with two teams now has several. Mako and Minnie Moon have to now face the challenges of the patron saints of professional wrestling, Mikey Every Night Steve Gage, and Big Jack and Kate are not going to be particularly happy about the fact that Mako and Moon might have cheated to win those belts. Now, admittedly, it wasn't their fault. Jeff Rebel assisted them because Rebel, to our extent at this point, hasn't been affiliated with Moon or Mako yet. But it depends entirely on where it goes from here. So Moon, in his confident glory, is now celebrating the fact that he is a tag team champion. And then you have Rebel, who is now going to feud with Gaines. Ooh, wow. What potential did these two have in this situation? See, Gaines and Rebel are both guys that have a lot of potential. Anthony Gaines has managed to find something in his character this year. He is a lot more motivated than he was in 2017. He's slimmed down a little bit. He's having killer matches with the likes of Ace Romero, where he literally got chucked 10 feet out of the ring from a pounce. And then there's Jed Rebel, a guy who's always been kind of sort of underrated a bit. The guy who's always been seen as the second shadow. I know a lot of people will say the comparisons to Jenny and Michaels, but I think both of these guys are the Michaels. Rebel has a lot of darkness that he can tap into if he wants to. This guy could have definitely cut a passionate, fiery promo on Gaines. Have this be a Blood Brothers feud. You two know what you're doing. You've talked about this for ages. You're gonna do good things. I can really tell in this situation. Gaines and Rebel, the Homewreckers, are a team that I've always liked. These two are gonna showcase something really special in STW. It's gonna be there are blood feuds, and then there are what these two can do. The matches that these two are going to have is going to be really interesting to see. Because Gaines has showcased to me that he has an advanced knowledge of match structure, psychology, and being able to do a match where it combines the elements of traditional wrestling with elements of hardcore wrestling, with elements of Japanese style, strong style. There's a lot here, you know. And I think Gaines and Rebel are going to have some really killer matches. And then we have the patron saints of professional wrestling, who are also going to be trying and gain those tag belts. Every Night and Gaines had a really solid match in this particular edition, particularly Every Night, who basically was the ring general for this match because he was the most experienced. He was deviously evil throughout this entirety of the match. Although he was quite surprised to see a number of patron saint shirts in the audience. And by quite surprised, I mean quite happy. Including my mother, who decided to don her patron saint's gear. She bought a patron saint shirt at the last show at Midway Mayhem. She really likes the patron saints of professional wrestling. And this was a show that they really showcased some really good wrestling here. All four teams did a phenomenal job in this match. Jack Stevens was a wrecking ball, and Kay Kearney was just the vicious force that everybody wanted to avoid fighting because she was the scariest person in this match. And when I mean scary, I mean in the pro wrestling sense of, oh God, she's ripping that person's spine out like Scorpion. You know, she's a fighter. Ever since Gold Rush, she's been showcasing that she's a really good professional wrestler. And the way that they did this match was they treated it as such. It was a bunch of professional wrestling teams competing in a professional wrestling match. I mean, it didn't matter if there was a shark person and a lady in this match. Everyone was a professional wrestler. You're all competing for a prize of a shiny trophy and maybe snagging a set of tiny shiny tag belts if you win this. What a fantastic match. And fatal four-way matches are always a really complicated match to do. So everybody's flying around doing their things, and the structuring was excellently done. It was the way normally in most it was strange to me to see it's like this is a regional indie promotion and they're doing a match structure that works really well for this crowd. So after the shocking betrayal of Jet Rebel and Vinnie Moon and Mako winning the tag belts and setting up future stories for the tag division, what's our next match? Did someone say adventure? Ah, yes, the professional adventurer of wrestling, Stone Rockwell, as seen on as Impact Wrestling. Yes, I'm still trying to get the name right on that one. It's now Impact Wrestling. As seen on past week's edition of Impact Wrestling, trying to take on that ruffian. Let me see here. Trying to take on some ruffian who calls everyone dummies. So, who was the guy that faced Rockwell this time? Well, we get a monumental break from Ryan Cassidy versus the Elderly, as Ryan Cassidy faces Stone Rockwell. I guess he thought that he would have better luck against an adventurer than against a Legends wrestler at this point. Ryan Cassidy screams his name like a Pokemon, and he's joined by his life coach, Jonathan Ashey, who has been kind of sort of a help for him and kind of sort of a hindrance. What with the fact that the life coach board betrayed them versus Tony Atlas, and that Cloudy and Cassidy couldn't face off against the powerhouse team of Bushwhacker Luke and Jet Rebel. Well, there's a person you can blame for Jet's sudden but possibly inevitable betrayal. Their gains, Bushwhacker Luke. After all, they were part of one of the most dangerous tag teams in the 60s for the 70s and the Sheepherders, right? That good old-fashioned Sheepherders magic. Anyway, our daring adventurer, after facing off against the dastardly Don Rob Sweet, now has to rebound in a situation where he's facing against Ryan Cassidy. This is once again another really solid match. They had this point on the card because Rockwell from Jones, Indiana, has a little bit of a thing about the heat. And they usually do his matches a little bit earlier in the card because if you're doing a match in the full day sun, some wrestlers, especially Cassidy, who's like from the province of Canada, might have some issues with the temperatures. At this point, the temperatures were hovering around 80 degrees on the card, and well, let's do this match here before the ring mat turns into a 90-degree affair. So, Rockwell, in his adventurous spirit, tries to face off against Cassidy, an honorable adventureship in wrestling, but instead Cassidy tries to do every evil tactic in the bout. Two mixed to negative results. Cassidy gets absolutely demolished by Rockwell at every turn, including Rockwell holding him up for a full minute for a delayed vertical suplex. Yeah, it was an adventurous, ham-fueled match where Rockwell and Cassidy did their best to entertain the crowd with this wonderful match. Both of them are really solid professional wrestlers who know what the heck that they're doing. Rockwell's veteran instincts and Cassidy's tendency to get under everybody's skin. There was one minor accident in ring in this situation because Rockwell does a spot where he does the adventurer's whip spot. And Cassidy, when he was trying to get out of the ring, accidentally got his back caught by the whip. Now, this did leave a gash on his back, but they worked for the injury. It was only a minor skin injury, wasn't anything particularly serious. Was a cut, but they managed to get through the match, and Cassidy was okay afterwards. You know. So it was a complete accident. They're trying to get out of the ring as fast as they can, but unfortunately, the surroundings around the ring are wet and muddy. It is somewhat difficult conditions to wrestle in. Thankfully, the wrestling ring itself is fine, especially at that point because there was a full hours plus worth of sun on top of the ring, which is black. So, Rockwell Cassidy had a really solid match that really was an uplifting match after the shocker that was that tag team tournament final. It did its job of getting the crowd re energized for a babyface defeating one of those dastardly heels. Cassidy continues to do a fantastic job of being able to get under everybody's skin as a heel. Ryan Cassidy! Even though he continues to say that say things like he's a Pokemon. Again, the ways that they did spots, like for instance, the time where he nearly pushed his manager off of the ring apron only to basically act like a professional mime. Or the time that Rockwell decided to counter with his genius adventure intelligence to counter Ashley and Cassidy's evil diabolical managerial antics. Although he did get bonked over the head with a clipboard. So now Rockwell not only has a hatred of giant boulders, but also a hatred of clipboards. Great job there, Jonathan. So, really fun, really entertaining match to continue things off and sets Rockwell back up into the heavyweight title picture hunt, as he will probably be continuing to gain wins over some of these other contenders. By the way, we have another one contendership match, Fatal 4-Way match, that's also coming up on this card before this next match, which is a Grapplers Anonymous showcase match. Sebastian Braun versus Dakota Orion. You may remember young Orion from the Midway Mayhem show as he had a match in front of the crowd for the first time in Chautauqua County. And he made quite an impression as he faced off against Kevin Bennett in a loss. This time, however, he's facing against an opponent with a similar experience in Sebastian Braun, who is known as the Dryad. Anyway, he tosses around a lucky coin and believes himself to be just this absolute old school brawler. Braun and Orion have themselves a classic David versus Goliath matchup, with Dakota serving as the David and Sebastian Braun as guess who? The Goliath. So Orion's goal in this match is pretty simple. Survive Sebastian Braun's onslaught. Now, Sebastian Braun has been in multi-man tag matches on the cards he's been in the past for STW. Orion has been in singles matches. Because Midway Mayhem was his first show that he was booked on. In this situation, the student showcase matches is a way to showcase young and upcoming wrestlers on your card. And this match was really well booked. First and foremost, the people who run this promotion understood the limitations that both of these individuals had. They didn't have to do anything too particularly crazy, apart from Braun doing a having him doing a deadlift suplex. Once again, trying to once again beat Rockwell's record, I guess. It was really fun to see it. It was like, okay, compare and contrast. So Braun and Orion had themselves a killer match, with Dakota being the babyface in peril who had to wait for the opportunity to counteract Braun's offense. Braun on offense was really solid. Really got a great impression from the crowd as they booed the bejesus out of this guy who was literally bullying this person throughout the match. It set up the right tone. Goliath got overconfident and tried to finish off David, only for David to get out of his reach at that point, do a running sprint, and start to counteract his moves. And then, of course, Braun forgot the number one rule when it comes to wrestling. Never underestimate the power of the roll-up pin. Braun got hit by a roll-up pin by Orion, and Orion gets the upset victory. A really well-worked match considering the limitations and the experience of these two individuals. These two really had a good match. A really good, solid match with well-placed fundamentals and really good match psychology. All of these matches so far have really showcased a higher grade than what you would normally see. And it's like, this is a regional indie promotion that's doing this. And from watching this promotion for the past year and just seeing the match quality improve show by show, there is not a bad match on this card that I'll spoil this ahead of here, with just 2 matches left. There's not a bad match on this card. Some of the matches might have had some mistimed moves, but again, it was an entertaining show, an entertaining card, and we're not even halfway done yet here. We just have 2 matches left to go, and our second Fatal 4-Way match. Cleveland's favorite son, J-Rock, appears into his favorite city of Johnstown, Johnstown, New York. He still thinks it's Johnstown, yes. It's Jamestown, but I'm not going to correct the guy who basically roots for the Cleveland Browns. He's already had to deal with enough misery the past year or so. The Moonlight Son, Mike Skyros, Invincible Vince Balor, and Nick Merrick. Interesting. So J-Rock, Mike Skyros, Valor, and Merrick have all been in matches beforehand. All of them have tried to stake a claim for the STW Heavyweight Championship. Since Vinny Moon was in the tag title match, J-Rock got his spot. Mike Skyros has done extremely well and has been consistent in matches in the past. Vince Valor had a heavyweight brawl with Terrell Kenneth. Nick Merrick defeated Mikey Every Night in Midway Mayhem and has been building momentum as of late. Number 1 contendership, 4 individuals. How did this match do? Well, J-Rock suffered the brunt of Merrick, Skyros, and Valor after they punched him repeatedly because they picked Cleveland Browns players on their fantasy football teams. Oops. And then Valor punched Skyros because, well, Skyros probably recommended that he go draft AJ McCarron the week before he was traded by the Oakland Raiders. Oops. So fantasy football brawls aside, each of them got their repertoire of moves in. J-Rock, once again, was hated by everybody in the building, by his beloved audience. Skyros continues to showcase a large amount of babyface fire. The guy is a hybrid of a cruiserweight wrestler and a heavyweight wrestler. This guy can deadlift over 400 pounds. and he shows it too. Valor is the guy you can use as a utility player or in the upper card or main event scene. He's got a kitchen sink of moves. He's mainly a power wrestler, but do not underestimate this guy's submission work. He had a fire caliber match at the Fight Night Volume 1 show versus Brandon Thurston, where they basically did submission moves for most of the match until Valor started to pull the power moves. And threw Thurston around like a sack of potatoes. And then there's Nick Merrick. Nick Merrick spent 3 months at the Storm Wrestling Academy up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And then he continued his training over at Grapplers Anonymous. Merrick has been positioned on undercards to gain and learn experience. This was his breakout match. Merrick showcases technical finesse, grappling skill, and the time when I basically took a photograph of him and he looked like he was holding an invisible coffee cup. This match was incredibly solid and incredibly well booked in this situation. Why? Well, one of the four participants in this match was taken out, not by a brawl, mind you, but by the patron saints of professional wrestling. Oh, those lovable patron saints! Mikey Every Night and Steve Gage, not Frug, trying to commit acts of evil, decide to interfere in ring against Vince Valor. Vince Valor proceeds to fight them and then chase them out of the ring as they chase each other. That just leaves 3 competitors: Skyros, J-Rock, and Nick Merrick. Each of these 3 individuals thought that they had the other one, but Nick, being Nick in the situation, So J-Rock throws Mike Skyros out of the ring. J-Rock proceeds to then celebrate in front of his in front of the lovable audience, who proceeds to boo him out of the building, only for Nick Merrick to chuck him into the turnbuckle pad and then get the pin on J-Rock for the 1-2-3. Yes, your number one contender is Nick Merrick. Well, that is a surprising turn of events now, isn't it? First Vinnie Moon, now Nick Merrick. You're beginning to notice his theme, aren't you? This promotion is pushing its younger talent. It's freshening up their cards and showcasing that, yes, you come to these events, you're going to see different talent. You're going to see different wrestlers come in, and you might see something different. And Nick Merrick and Vinnie Moon and Mako winning the tag belts, and Nick Merrick winning the number one contendership for the STW Heavyweight Championship, it rewards people for coming to shows and seeing these guys on the card build themselves up, wins and losses and matches. And here you got a guy who's been on the undercard, who is now breaking into the main event scene, who's making it to the upper card and main event scene. And he's a solid technical wrestler. He's working on his charisma, his personality, his promos, and he's got the build. Oh, what plans do they have for Merrick? Well, I'll tell you the truth on this one. Whoever he faces off in this last match is going to have a really interesting match, because it's time for our STW heavyweight title match. Fatal 4-way match, really good match once again. Once again, two complex matches with a fatal 4-way match type, and both matches delivered to raunchous applause and cheers and boos from the audience. In this situation, Mick Merrick was not somebody a lot of people expected to win this match, but I'm really glad they went with this booking decision. Again, push the youth in this situation. Okay, you have a combination of veteran talent that can be used in the clutch and youth guys who have the ability to break out. You now have Nick Merrick in a situation where he can face against the heavyweight champion. Build up the guys that you have. Build up your regional stars, because that way you can rely on your regional draws to draw a show in. And it helps with the cost, and it helps with building that connection and that relationship between you and your fan base. That it showcases to you, we're developing our regional talent, regional wrestlers who really, really do really good work in ring. I've talked to Nick Merrick before. He's a really solid guy, really nice individual, has always been happy to see us. And it's like, and I'm so stoked to see him get this shot in this situation. And well, to tell you the truth on this one, it's going to be interesting to see how Valor handles the patron saints of professional wrestling. They interfered by getting rid of Valor. Interesting. Well, I hope for the heavyweight champion's sake that they don't have any more involvement in the proceedings. He hopes, because remember, Thurston and the Saints have got an axe to grind with everybody. As for Skyros, he now has a ready-made opponent in Nick Merrick, since Nick Merrick basically took his number one contendership in that situation via slightly underhanded means by chucking J-Rock into the ring post while the referee was down. Or was he up at that point in time? Couldn't really remember, but it was a situation where it was a legal move, but as Nick attempts to do the counter on J-Rock, and J-Rock, as always, he is so hateable, so lovingly hateable. He gets the crowd under his skin. He proclaims himself to be the greatest athlete of Cleveland, and just gives that Cleveland hatred to a match. Vince Fowler, once again, showcase it's deceptive at first, because you still look at this guy and you go, oh wow, he's a power guy. Wait, did he just do a technical move? Valor has a Swiss Army knife moveset. He can do technical wrestling, he can do power moves, he can do story, he can do character, he can do selling. He's a guy that, if you underestimate him, he's going to show you just how good of a wrestler he is. And everybody builds each other up. Every wrestler tries to build each other up in this situation because they're working in front of a crowd. They're working in a regional area that for the longest of time has been dormant. Now suddenly it's like Jamestown, the Southern Tier of all places. But yeah, number one contendership fatal four-way match worked as intended. Got the crowd behind everybody there, whether as a face or a heel, and came away with a finish that shocked a lot of people once again. Once again, getting that storyline shock in there. Not doing what you think is predictable. Instead, going with the youth. Going with a young guy in this situation. So next up is our STW Heavyweight title match. For the past 6 months, the diabolical dawn of professional wrestling, the Don Rob Sweet, and his diabolical manager, who is a literal furnace of hatred, Super Beast, and the devious landlord, have been dominating the top of Southern Tier Wrestling's heavyweight championship division. However, they forgot in this point in time that one person was owed a rematch clause. After defeating the adventurer Stone Rockwell at Midway Mayhem and defeating James Santel at Fight Night Volume 1, there was one person that they had yet to climb. The one person that had yet to climb the mountain to get back his crown. And that was big time Bill Collier. Now, I've talked about Bill Collier in the past. This guy has killer matches every time he sets foot in a main event situation. Remember what I said about Vince Fowler and being a utility player? Big Time is also a utility wrestler. He's a power wrestler. He can do submission work. He can do psychology. He can do character. He's a venerable Swiss Army knife of pro wrestling moves and styles. Same thing with Valor. It can apply to Collier. Collier had a series of phenomenal heavyweight championship main event matches throughout 2017. A match that made the Southern Tier Wrestling Heavyweight Championship mean something. And I have been one of the biggest vocal critics of belts and their purpose. And in this situation, the only exception I will point out in these situations are regional championship belts, where they are important because your regional champion represents your promotion and it represents the wrestlers in that promotion as, okay, this is what we have as far as wrestling goes. This is the wrestler who is a worker, who knows how to work. And here we have a situation where you have a championship title change, where Rob Sweet shockingly defeated Bill Collier at STW Gold Rush. And it was interesting reading the local paper's article and showcasing, as the promoter talked about it, was like children were crying and adults were shocked. Well, I kind of remember it a little bit differently personally. I remember the children basically wanted to grind Rob Sweet up into a fine paste and sell him and bake him into Girl Scout cookies because he was being chased by small children who wanted to remove his legs. I'd never seen a man develop into a 100-meter sprinter before, but Rob Sweet should really start doing charity 5K runs. Given how fast he runs, I've never seen somebody move that fast before to get away from screaming angry children. The children were ECW mutants level of homicidal rage, and the adults were in shock. And trying not to curse because this is a family-friendly show. The emotion, there were adults crying because Big Time lost. It was a wonderful, glorious thing. People discovering their inner child again because of that main event. But this is STW's Bergman Brawl 2, and this is their main event. Big Time Bill Collier tries to reclaim his prize against the Don Rob Sweet. And once again, we have another variety of a match that we have not seen from Bill Collier at this point. You see, Super Beast at this point, being the devious evil manager that he is, comes up with a diabolical evil plan as only he would. He decides to take out Big Time's legs. Rob Sweet focuses on Big Time's legs throughout the entirety of this match. What happens in this situation is you have a classic submission-based match where Rob Sweet is doing everything in his power to take out Big Time via a leg submission. He puts on hold after hold after hold, and they make sure to make the most out of their main event time. It played to Rob Sweet's strengths as a devious, underhanded heel, while also showcased the babyface fire and phenomenal selling ability of Bill Collier. There's a point where they're doing a figure four leg lock battle in the middle of the ring, and it looked like a Renaissance art piece. I'm not kidding. That's how I captioned it when I posted the photo on Twitter. The match was paced beautifully, considering at this point it was 85 degrees outside, and you had to take your time in ring because you don't want to blow yourself up in the middle of this summer heat wave. So you have these two well-conditioned wrestlers who are able to pace themselves in this match and get the crowd behind them for the story that they were telling. It also helped that Bill Collier had a plan of his own. See, Bill Collier isn't just a big wrestler who can destroy people. He's also an intellectual wrestler, a smart wrestler. He took out Landlord, and Landlord had many rent money that he missed because he landed in the mud and ended up getting stuck. Although this was during the tail end of the match, as Landlord attempted to interfere and Bill Collier countered. Super Beast had already been countered in the match. So what happens is, all Bill Collier needs is one shot with his finisher to put down Rob Sweet. But Rob Sweet tries to prevent that the entirety of the match. Bill Collier is selling for most of it. He gets his shots in. He sells the leg. He makes sure that everything is done as the match is structured too. Bill Collier sells the leg. He gets a last-minute dose of adrenaline. He punches the Landlord out of the ring. Landlord lands in mud. Many a rent money not being collected. And then counteracts Rob Sweet, hits his finisher for the 1-2-3. He wins the championship belt, and the family is devastated. Their iron grip on Southern Tier Wrestling has come to a shocking end. Even with Super Beast's diabolical genius planning, Rob Sweet's devious tendency to try and destroy Big Time Bill Collier's leg, and Landlord's ability to change a match. Well, one pair of brass knuckles to the adventurer Stone Rockwell, of course. But here they are in Big Time's rematch. He gets the championship back. What a phenomenal job in this situation. And post-match, Bill Collier offers a handshake to Rob Sweet. Super Beast is dumbfounded and angry. Angry that he has lost the prize that he had been holding with his fingers. With his fingers and his touch, he could change Southern Tier Wrestling around with his champion, the Don, Rob Sweet. However, they lost the belt. And all three of them surround the ring and start beating up Big Time Bill Collier, only for Nick Merrick to run in and save Bill Collier. Post-match, Bill Collier cuts a phenomenal promo on Nick Merrick, building him up for that confrontation between the two of them. You want a shot at this belt anytime, kid? I'll give it to you. Anytime. So, you now have the setup here. The family want that belt back. They want that belt back badly because that is the way that they control power in STW. Is through the heavyweight championship belt. It's a story as simple as the dawn of time, but it's a story that works. Super Beast is not going to take this loss lying down. He is going to try and find any way possible to possibly destroy Big Time Bill Collier and whoever this heavyweight champion is. Rob Sweet will have his rematch clause. And then there's Nick Merrick, the wild card in all of this. He wants the STW Heavyweight Championship too. Who knows what exactly? You now have suspense for this main event angle. How long is Big Time Bill Collier going to be able to defend that championship belt with Rob Sweet and his cronies in this situation? When is Nick Merrick going to cash in that number one contendership? Well, they got a show in October. If you want to come see for yourselves when they announce it, I recommend coming to that show. So there that ends STW Bergman Brawl 2, but that does not end this story. Phenomenal card from top to bottom. This was a show that was incredibly well booked and well performed by every party involved. They put a lot of effort into this. With the adversity that they had to face with the rainstorm, with everything that happened around them, they made this show work. They made it work, and it worked incredibly well. Because again, it's just adversity. It's just a rainstorm. Pro wrestling shows do not start on time usually. So it's like, okay, a 30 minute to an hour wait, that's fine. We're here. We'll sit down, we'll relax, we'll order some food, get some drinks, and we'll have a good time in a family-friendly environment. I love family-friendly shows. They're enjoyable shows to be at. And they're shows I cannot recommend enough if people want to bring their children and families along with to come see a family-friendly show that is incredibly enjoyable. And I've said this before on the air beforehand, but regional independent wrestling is one of the biggest reasons as to how I've kept doing this. Because I like WWE and I like covering WWE. I like covering international wrestling, but the thing that kept me through a troubling 2017 in professional wrestling and enjoying professional wrestling were the regional indie shows. Because it's just me and my folks. Nobody else. I take my mother to pro wrestling shows. We have such a fun time. It's such a fun time to go to shows. To support regional independent wrestling. Good regional independent wrestling. Wrestling that proves itself time and time again. These people who are artists, professional athletes, entertainers, sports entertainers, whatever you call them, professional wrestlers, workers. This was a card that really, really would surprise somebody if they saw it. They're like, this is here? Yes, it's here in Western New York. And you can see it too. A lot of these people work ESW up in Empire State Wrestling, or Upstate Pro in Rochester, or IWF in Brockport, or other promotions. I can't really remember the full list, but folks, there's another free show, not from STW, but from ESW, in Salamanca, New York for the annual Falling Leaves Festival. Professional wrestling, a lot of these people are going to be on the card. And there's some faces on that aren't on this card who are really good professional wrestlers who've been touring the United States and Canada this year. Guys like the Red Death Danny Garcia or Puff. The remix of professional wrestling, Kevin Bennett, Kevin Blackwood. All these people are doing the heart and soul of professional wrestling, and they're really showcasing Buffalo and Western New York. This has been a territory that's been kind of dormant for about 20 years now. And now all of a sudden, with everybody else either on fire or having personnel issues or management issues or wrestler issues, all kinds of issues, 2018 has been the year of chaos. The most steady territory by far in the United States has been Western New York. There might be some regional bias because I live here, but I've seen that from my own eyes. And I can deduct with logical intelligence and certainty. This is a territory that is very underrated. And these workers putting their hearts and souls into their work, into their characters, their personalities, and their ring work. There you go, one of those important things. When you come to a professional wrestling show in Western New York, you will be entertained. It's a fun environment. It's a fun, good environment. And because these are family friendly shows and sometimes held in school grounds, you don't have to worry about alcohol. You can take your kids to a show. Don't have to worry about random drunks. And at this show, they had a beer tent. So everybody was drinking over at the beer tent. Everyone who wasn't drinking, they're here at the Babe Park, and it was enforced because you have security guards all over the place and park officials because this was the mayor's event. Our mayor of Jamestown, New York, Sam Teresi, takes this event very seriously. The Labor Day Festival is an event that Jamestown, New York is incredibly proud of. This was my first time at the Labor Day Festival. It was a really enjoyable experience. I had curly fries with cheese. I got to see professional wrestling done by professional wrestlers. And of course, after the matches, before the main event, I headed down to the merchandise table. Again, got myself some really, really nice stuff. Because I wear professional wrestling t-shirts in my professional business. I sell microgreens to restaurants. And I got a Kate Carney hat, Kate Carney beanie with pin for my mother for an early birthday present. I got an Reza Ellswood t-shirt for having one of the best mattress matches that I've ever seen. I mean, the second edition of the STW Jamestown mattress match, as well as just having this incredible presence throughout all of the undercard. Just being able to get everyone to hate this hipster vegan character. And considering I don't really like the hipster vegans at the cafe, there's something to channel those feelings. Reza Elwood and Topper Sinclair. And it was so nice. And then we got a shirt from Bill Collier. And I've never seen a wrestler more happy to see a group of fans than Bill Collier. Everybody was happy to see us. Everybody was happy to see us. It was like we were there at the show supporting independent wrestling. It was enjoyable crowd. We enjoyed it immensely. Cheers and boos and all that stuff. This wasn't here a few years ago. This wasn't here a few years ago. This wasn't here at all in Jamestown a few years ago, and yet it's here. Western New York is a scene that is rebuilding. It is a scene that is rebuilding because everybody has just suddenly decided we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're actually going to do something, and we're going to build something for both the present and the future. Because professional wrestling used to thrive in Buffalo. Professional wrestling used to thrive in the olden days. It's had some up and downs in recent decades, but it's on the upswing yet again. If you're a professional wrestler and you want a nice, peaceful environment, come to Western New York. Come to Western New York. It's a lovely territory. You get to work with some really good professional wrestlers who've been professionally trained. Grapplers Anonymous is doing the Lord's work. And I mean, I don't mean to go all biblical in this situation, but look, a dedicated professional wrestling training facility in Buffalo, New York, with people who legitimately care about safety and well-being of people who compete in the squared circle of a professional wrestling ring is so important. At a reasonable rate as well. Look at the prices for Graps Anonymous. Those prices are incredibly reasonable compared to other professional wrestling schools because they understand their environment. They are smack dab in the middle of the Rust Belt. They ain't going to charge you an arm and a leg. You have to pass a physical. You pass a physical, you pass a tryout test. You're in. If you don't pass the tryout test, okay, then you can still train at the gym to get yourself into shape. Not only is this helping you spiritually, it is helping you physically. Remember what I talked about with Puff? Puff didn't pass the test at first. He wasn't allowed into a wrestling ring until he could cut his weight down. And for month after month after month, Mikey every night, Brendan Thurston made sure that this guy could get his weight down. He pays for an even page seminar. And he does a phenomenal job in ring. He has since slimmed down. And there is an example right there of a guy whose health and spiritual well-being was improved by professional wrestling. Because there's no denying it. They saved this guy's life. They saved this guy's life from a physical perspective. They did something morally good. And they're doing it for everybody else, too. People are recovering from injuries, getting the proper strength, conditioning, cardio. Those are things that oftentimes in most territories you don't get. You get a practice match in ring the day of the show. That's maybe it. And to see this regional territory in Western New York care about its workers, care about what product that they're putting out in front of that wrestling ring. And I'm still shocked. It's my neck of the woods. It's Western New York. And I'm getting a little bit emotional talking about this, but when I first showed up at my first STW show, which was Gold Rush 2017, the atmosphere was a little bit on the rigid side. It was an atmosphere of people were waiting for the pins to drop. And all of a sudden, they start noticing who's the people in the crowd there who are booing the heels and cheering the faces. Only a few people actually who were on that card knew that we were there because we had attended legend shows and the special fundraiser shows that professional wrestling companies sometimes hold. And two wrestlers that knew us were John McChesney and Vince Fowler, who had been on cards in the past. And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's that family that attends those legend shows." And what a funny story that I've told in the past. I know Brandon Thurston on Twitter. And what happened is that my mother accidentally cheered Brandon Thurston at first and then booed him because because we weren't really sure about the alignment of the patron saints of professional wrestling. I figured they were a heel stable, but I had never seen them in ring before until Gold Rush 2017. And this card was the thing that made me go, I'm coming back here. I mean, we're going to head to our local regional promotion regardless of the result, but man, that gave us a great first impression. Then we go to the Battle Line show, and what happens is we ended up paying second row seats, but because there were only a bunch of kids sitting in front of us, it was basically like we had front row seats. And the wrestlers, they look over and they're like, "How is that small section over there booing people or cheering people so loudly?" And I got to meet Preston in person that time because we missed each other at the Gold Rush show, and because I had to get my dad home. Doesn't like crowds very much. And so in the hot searing sun, with my Vince Fowler T-shirt that I just got because I felt really bad for them because Vince had to wrestle first in an 85-degree heat in a tent. So there's that situation, and I talked with him. It was seeing somebody who's really supportive of independent wrestling, and show after show after show. It's like I have attended. I don't know how many STW shows I've attended. I think I may have attended like 7 or 8 shows at this point. I've become something of regular, but I don't have a regular's personality. I really like it when new fans come to an STW show. You get to experience some really good professional wrestling. And when I talk about it with my friends, they're like, "Oh, cool! You have a really good regional promotion, man. You have a really good regional promotion you go to." And they talk and they say, "You're really passionate about this." because this is positive, because this is really positive in this situation. It is not something that is born out of the what you would call the needs for something that you can't have. This is real. This is here. This is a promotion that is doing things, does the little things. It makes is a promotion that you can go and have a smile on your face at the end of the show because the babyface won against that diabolical, dastardly heel. It has traditionalism mixed with modernism, mixed with modern professional wrestling. It's a lovely combo. It's a combo that works. My mother is not much of a professional wrestling fan. She knows theater, and she gets a kick out of these shows. I never would have expected when my remote died on a random episode of TNA Impact in 2009 that I would be starting this journey into professional wrestling. I never expected that I would be here now, 50 episodes later into Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, talking about my regional independent wrestling promotion that I go to these shows and have such a good time at. STW is having another show in October. Date is to be determined at this point. And when the show is announced, I will talk about it here on Wacky World of Wrestling. Because suffice to say, they set up a lot of stories, angles, and feuds on this show that they're going to be continuing into the next show. The Reigns of Battle can clear the grass of any past battles before it, giving you a fresh start. And this, well, this was as fresh of any start as you could get. Youthful wrestlers coming into the territory, the card changing around, wrestlers now engaged into feuds, allies becoming enemies, enemies becoming allies. You have it all here at this Bergman Brawl show. And that is incredibly cool to see. This has been episode 50 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, The Reigns of Battle Before the Brawl. Man, 2 title changes on one show. Coolness. Such a cool thing. Oh, man. This has been episode 50 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. My name is William Fizzpatrick. I hope you folks had a good day or night or whenever you're watching this particular podcast. I'll see you for the next edition of Wacky World of Wrestling. Episode 51 is looking more like a variety show at this point. But if you're interested in catching a podcast about economics, I wholeheartedly recommend that you check out WrestleNomics Radio with Brandon Howard Thurston and Chris Mukiana Harrington. There I currently have a Patreon. Currently, right now, because of my financial situation at this point, I can't really contribute at this point. But what I can do is I can recommend it to you. It's only $5 a month, and you get access to so much content. You get access to Graps content. It's an economics podcast that can teach you about the economics of professional wrestling if you're unfamiliar with pro wrestling or if you're unfamiliar with economics. It's a lovely teaching tool. A teaching tool that anybody who is either a professional wrestler or a professional economics person can use to basically look at the world of professional wrestling. They are giving you that gateway, it's that door. And they also have a free show available that they tape every week. WrestleNomics Radio is a podcast that I wholeheartedly support because it is a podcast that is teaching you the values of economics, analytical statistics, graphs, and Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Because if you can survive Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, you are truly a dedicated individual. Sometimes it's a bit harder than actually professional wrestling is surviving an Excel sheet. So this has been the Reigns of Battle Before the Brawl, Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, episode 50. I never would have thought I would be here 50 episodes later, but yet here I am, 50 episodes in, talking about a local regional professional wrestling show that did things that was so enjoyable. It was an enjoyable card. A lot of passion, a lot of drive, a lot of soul, a lot of heart and soul, with sensible, logical booking and sensible, logical characters bringing you a theatrical story in a professional wrestling ring in a baseball field in the middle of Jamestown, New York. Magic happened on this day, on that beautiful Sunday afternoon. What's next? That's the cool part. Leaves you wanting. You want to see what this theatrical drama will bring next. And the stories that they're about to tell. Ooh, there's potential there. But anyway, this has been the Reigns of Battle Before the Brawl, episode 50 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you for the next edition of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, episode 51. To everybody who's listening to this broadcast, be it a wrestling fan, a professional wrestler, or everybody there, have a good day or night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time for the next edition of Wacky World of Wrestling. Bye!